Synod and to the ELCA. One of them is through our benevolence, which is part of our budget. And for this fiscal year, I believe it was to the tune of about $15,000 to $16,000 is what we budgeted for that. And that was approved by the congregation at the congregational meeting in June. To some consternation, however, because it was felt that it was inadequate in terms of our representative share, which I agree with. However, circumstances being what they are, we are giving what we feel that we can give. Just like people are struggling in their own personal budgets, our church is also looking at, offsetting and struggling and figuring out how we can make ends meet. So the Synod Benevolence, we're still contributing $15,000. I believe we may have withheld so far any of that benevolence, but our intent now is, since we balance things out, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, we feel that we will be able to provide benevolence that we put in the budget. So that's one way, is through budgeted benevolence. The other way is through additional congregational response, through things like the United Lutheran Appeal, which is currently ongoing. You should be receiving a letter, or have received already a letter with regard to that, which we will ask for contributions, offerings next week. And so that goes directly to the Virginia Synod, to specific organizations that provide ministry and outreach, and also take care of our own, so to speak. That's another way. And then you'll have another opportunity with World Hunger, the World Hunger Appeal, which will follow swiftly after the United Lutheran Appeal. Cara Ferrari will be leading that for our church. But that looks even further out. That looks towards ministries like potentially disaster relief in Haiti, food, medical supplies, those kinds of things. But that's an ELCA-wide response. And again, our congregation supports those through your offerings and contributions. And that's another way that we can provide benevolence. Then we have some local benevolence. So we do things like help, trying to think of some of the other local benevolence activities. Pastoral Counseling Center is another one that we provide local benevolence to. So there are a number of different elements of that. Help is a budgeted line item. Pastoral counseling, I believe, is also a budgeted line item, or was at one point.
Every one of those boxes that is out there that different groups in our congregation support for women's ministry, all that is part of your mission.
Right. But so benevolence is not just financial, but it's also in-kind response in terms of.
But in terms of the ELCA, we're still going to make a contribution.
Yes, we're still going to make a contribution both for the benevolence to the Synod and then also United Lutheran Appeal and World Hunger, based on congregational response, obviously. I mean, the United Lutheran Appeal and the World Hunger Drive is not a budgeted item. It's a congregational response.
But the ELCA is.
But the ELCA is a budgeted item. And our plan is to support them the way that we budgeted this year.
Thank you.
Pete.
I was going along on the atrium, so I did but it looked like the budget, when you looked at it, was going down, people were not.
Yeah, we're still making payments. We're still meeting our obligations. That's the bottom line. The building fund, or the capital fund, as we've kind of transitioned to in terms of terminology, the capital fund, though, is not receiving the offerings that we had hoped it would. So from a month-to-month basis, any given month we might be down $5,000, which means the bills are getting paid, but they're coming from our reserves, because we do have some reserves in the capital account. And that's where the discussion that Pastor Preborn spoke to is, we have some decisions we need to make, because this month to month we keep on coming up short in terms of offerings for the capital fund. We have to continue to dip into our reserves. Well, sooner or later, you're not going to have the reserves. So we've got to kind of make a decision at some point. The dredging operation may help us in that regard, because we've got some money coming in, and we have some latitude. Well, we have full latitude to determine how that money is used. But the reality is, from month to month, we're not making the mark to pay all of the bills that we're paying the bills, but we're dipping into reserves for that to the tune of about $5,000 a month.
But also be aware that there's not like a 5-year or a 7-year or a 10-year payoff plan for the
it's a 30-year loan.
It's a 30-year.
And we've been doing this now for 5 years, since
And most of our
2005.
mortgages are all,
So we've got 25 years left on the Atrium mortgage to the tune of probably, you know, 1.2, $1.4 million.
And it's all integrated.
Right.
Understanding.
Yeah, so we got the atrium, we've got the land, we've got some school assets also that are all
It wasn't
integrated.
the atrium first, and then we waited, when we were going to wait till we finished paying the atrium before we got to the land.
Well, that was, no, well,
Yeah.
here's what we had hoped. We had hoped that a land opportunity might have come a little bit later, but not to the extent where the atrium would have been paid off and then all of a sudden we do the land. That would have been a 30-year wait.
I don't think they're not separate. My understanding is, and it's not my area, but my understanding is that they're not separate instruments. They're not separate loans. That every time it was redone, I think it's the entire kit and caboodle.
But I think Pete was talking more to strategy than anything. Is that more, less of the financial, but more of the strategy? The way Pastor Stowe had always viewed it is he knew he wanted to do something over there with the land. In fact, we had already had plans to buy properties as they became available. And so that was already a thought process. But the fact that it happened concurrently with the atrium, which I guess the atrium was about 2004, 2005, and the land came available in 2005, that was not how we had wanted it to be. So that's taking on a big load of debt all at one time. And effectively, that's where we're at. But nonetheless, as we know, Gloria Day, we take risks because it's the right thing to do, if it's the right thing to do. And Pastor looked at that, and we as a congregation looked at it and voted on it and said, let's do that and let's see what we can get out of it.
Well, the land we bought wasn't even the land that was on the table that were talking about.
Right, that was a whole different.
We were buying a whole little
Right,
parcel
we
and
were
lots
buying
of little
little
houses, you know, so we were given
So
an
it was-
opportunity.
Yeah, it was an opportunity we couldn't pass up.
So,
Well, see, because when you go back to the church portion of it, when the church was put in, boom, this was it, this was the mortgage, this was, we had the timetable for it.
we haven't done that.
Oh, we have a timetable now also. It's a 30-year mortgage.
But we didn't have a 30-year mortgage when we built the church.
there's nothing.
No, we had a 15-year mortgage. It was just a different, yeah, it was a different instrument.
Well, we sold bonds and
Yeah, it was just done, it was done
process.
totally differently in terms of how we financed it and the payment period on that particular thing. And a 15-year obviously is great, but I didn't live through it, but I heard that it was tough, those were tough times to manage through. And, you know, even at that point, we were wondering whether we could make the monthly payments on as they ballooned over after about a 5-year period. So, Tom.
I don't want to hear any more of that. Ministry questionnaires, when do you think they will come out?
What's that?
The ministry, the questionnaires?
The questionnaire, well, the
When do you think
council
that'll
is going to vote on it, on review and vote on it on Tuesday, this Tuesday.
be out?
So, and then it'll be handed back to the group, to the study task group. Ed Kleinschmidt, 5 other people. They will then package it up, do whatever massaging they need to do, and then get it out to the congregation. So, within a couple of weeks. That's the hope. And there are a lot of write-ins on there, so feel free, as Larry said earlier, I mean, if we didn't capture the questions the right way, write them in. Write in whatever's on your mind.